Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. Hey guys, our guest today has spent many years implementing SAP solutions for Fortune 500 companies. She uses human-centered design processes to build solutions that address the unique productivity and collaboration challenges faced by freelancers and small companies as they grow their businesses. She is also a regular author and speaker on a variety of tech topics. Welcome to the show, the founder of Wonderly Software Solutions, Amber Christian.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone's looking forward to a good time today.
I'm looking forward to a good time. You got some cool stuff you're doing. We've been planning this for a while now, and I'm just happy that we're able to connect. And we were talking a little bit off camera about making sure that our conversation isn't only for you and I, it's for the audience. It's going to be an education lesson too, talking about SAP solutions and some of the things I'm not very clear on that I feel our audience can benefit from. And also, as we record this, we're still in the pandemic. This is early 2021. It's kind of lingering at this point, it feels like. So we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and business during this tough time. There's a lot of great content here. I'm looking forward to us also diving into your story a little bit. And before we do that, I want everyone to know where they can find you. And it's wonderlysoftwaresolutions.com. You can go check out your company there. On Instagram, I love this. It's at Bella_Scena, which is SCENA. In Italian, that means beautiful scene, right? I love that. And then on Facebook, it's Meet Bella Scena. And if you're wondering, guys, well, it's Wonderly's the company name. And what is Bella Scena? That's actually the product. And we have the founder of Wonderly with us today, Amber Christian. Welcome to the show. Bada bing, bada boom. We got you here. How does it feel to be on Mic'd Up?
I'm incredibly excited to be on Mic'd Up. We've been talking about this for quite a while. And for the audience, Mike and I keep having these great discussions. I mean, we need to record one of these.
I know, right? That's how it actually started. I think we were introduced from a mutual connection, I believe. Mm-hmm. And as we're talking, we're like, this is good. We need to record this. Let's get this thing going. So what we want to know, at least I do, is a little bit more about you prior to launching Wonderly. So did you always have an interest in tech? Is that something as a little kid you were kind of always thinking about tech in the future?
No, I wasn't. So I'm going to give away my age a little bit here, but my first exposure to technology was good old Oregon Trail, baby.
Same here. I raised my hand. I remember being like in 3rd grade in the library, and that was what got us into the library, was that there was an open computer with the floppy disk.
Absolutely. Hitting the space bar to get some pemmican, man. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, hand-eye coordination, it was important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I didn't grow up, playing tech or taking apart computers or anything like that. The journey for me actually happened in college. And so this is a shout out in case you have any professors that are listening into this. It was actually a course in college I took. And I thought, this is really interesting. It was called Intro to MIS. Mm-hmm. And that course really got me thinking about computers and technology in a way I never had. And so I ended up adding on a major, which then meant I had to take computer programming and all the things that went along with that. But for me, the journey really started in college. So I had a little bit of this, especially if anybody in the listeners has this as well, underdog syndrome, because I came into this in college. I know when we don't start out doing something from the time we're little, sometimes we can feel like, oh, we're playing catch up, right?
Yeah. Or there's another term for it, imposter syndrome too. And that's even like if you're on the right path as a business
Mhm.
owner, entrepreneur. I'm sure it happens with athletes as well, or other fields
Mhm.
where you're doing the right thing, but you kind of tell yourself that you don't belong because you
Mhm.
don't have like the typical story in that. So that's kind of
Right.
how you were feeling, like, I'm getting this late start. I haven't been doing this since I was 3. Like, there's some kids that now grew up in the world of coding, so they're going to go
Mhm.
into and be like these ridiculous coders. And I still don't understand coding inside and out the way that a 15-year-old might. So if I wanted to go down that road, I would feel kind of like I have imposter syndrome. But really, we can learn it. You were learning it in college. I don't want to speak for you, but is that kind of how you felt in the moment?
Absolutely. I absolutely have dealt with imposter syndrome of coming into different industries or into different situations and not feeling like I necessarily had a background in it. I'm a kid off a farm. That's what I tell people at the heart of it. I'm a kid off a farm from rural Minnesota. That was where I grew up. It
Mhm,
wasn't exactly the plan that I would end up some tech entrepreneur. And so if anybody ever relates and thinks, how did I end up here? I'm like, sometimes I wonder that myself too.
mhm,
But that's what that journey is about. It
mhm.
was about that self discovery of, hey, I happen to be really good at certain things and continuing to double down on myself and to continue to grow in my journey and keep taking risks. And
Yeah.
that's what ultimately led me to this place. And so it wasn't something that happened in a year or two, closer to 20.
Awesome. And thank you for sharing that. But another thing too that I think is cool, and it doesn't necessarily make one person better than another. We're not trying to judge, but the fact that you have more of a unique story makes it interesting for sure, that you have this kind of background in farming, yet you're a tech person. That doesn't always go together. It's kind of, where if you did grow up, maybe your parents were real techie and you went to like a school,
Mhm.
maybe you went to like a private school and then you went to a tech college and you were into what you're doing now. That kind of seems like, okay, well, we get it. It makes sense. But I think you come at life a little differently from the things that you learned on the farm, or that your family mentality was different. And it's cool to me that you can apply those things into what you're doing now. Instead of thinking about it the way it was written in a textbook for you from day one, you're taking and applying a different background. Plus, your tech. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, you're educated in this, so
Mhm.
you're highly qualified. Plus, you have a unique background to match with it. And I think that's cool when you pair that. You can see behind me, I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan. Right now, we're still in the playoffs. We're still alive. It's divisional weekend coming up. It's also my birthday Saturday. It's going to be on my
Ah,
birthday. And I bring that
yay.
up because we got Josh Allen as our quarterback, and his family grew up. He grew up on a farm, and he comes to Buffalo. I don't know that he's ever been here prior to being a Buffalo Bill, but he has kind of that chip on the shoulder. He's not the pretty boy quarterback that everyone wants to draft. He grew up in that mentality of he had to earn everything. 50
Mhm.
colleges told him no before one told him yes, that kind of thing. He didn't have he's a prospect from age 12, where colleges are already looking at this kid. Everyone was trying to say that he couldn't do it rather than, wow, he can do it, except for the Bills. The Bills took, I don't want to say a chance on him because he was highly sought after once he got to the draft. But a lot of people, even on draft day, myself included, I'm on the record, I'll say it right here. I don't know that I believed it because I've seen it so many other times not work. And right now it is working out, and the Bills look like geniuses for taking him. But I think it's neat that, in that case, it's a football story with a farm background. Your case, it's a tech story with a kind of the farm background. So now we want to get a little technical, right? I got my glasses on, right? I'm going to put a piece of tape in the middle. Okay. We're going to jump into talking about SAP solutions. What the heck
Mhm.
does that even mean in layman's terms, if you can explain it to me in the audience? And how does it help? What is its
Mhm.
major purpose?
Yep. So I spent the first 15 plus years of my career specializing in SAP solutions. And speaking of niches, here's my niche. Welcome, nerds. Don't let your eyes roll back in your head because I did the boring stuff. Actually, what I really did, this is an interesting thing for entrepreneurs, is I found the thing that people didn't want to do and
Hmm.
I built a whole business around that
Beautiful.
because nobody else wants to do it. You have
Yeah.
an endless runway.
Yeah.
Like, like if you think about like things people don't want to deal with, there's a
Mhm.
nugget, and they're like, oh, You're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like, but if I do that, I'm really good at it, and other people don't want to do it, they'll hire me to do it.
Yeah. What's the task that people don't want to do? What can you describe
What
it
it
looks like?
was in my world, it was dealing with big banks. I built bank interfaces for large corporations to be able to pay their suppliers, collect money from their customers, and make that work in their accounting systems, which were SAP. So, who is SAP? Probably the largest software company that you may never have heard of. It's a multi-billion-dollar software company because it's based in Waldorf, Germany.
Wow.
They own, you may have heard of some of their other products, Concur, Ariba. So they own a whole bunch of other products that they've subsequently bought. But here's what they really do. The crux of their business is they run the back office accounting, sales, supply chain systems for big corporations. So it's all the under the covers stuff, like who keeps the books up to date, who makes sure that people get paid, who keeps track of their inventory. That's the kind of stuff that SAP solutions do.
So highly important, and just not, most people aren't going to wake up in the morning and say, I'm so excited that we're going to go in there and see how all these transactions actually connect and work, and all the like red and green wires that are connected inside of a machine that we don't know why or how they're connected. You're figuring out how to make that work.
Absolutely.
I think that's awesome. And now let's make it make even more sense for our audience, and tell us about your mission, your why behind Wonderly, really, like why you do what you do.
Yes. So when I started Wonderly, I had years of consulting experience, and I wanted to make a transition from just implementing other people's solutions, which is what I was doing in the SAP world, to building more solutions. And I really wanted to do it by involving people. And it's a little bit of a novel concept because I said, well, what if I talked to people before I built software about the problem I was trying to solve? In the technology industry, like, have you ever found yourself going to use a piece of software and you're like, how do I do this? How you think this is not intuitive at all? A lot of times software gets built a little bit in a vacuum. Now that's changing in the industry, but a lot of people, when they first build software, they go off in their basement and they build it and they go, here, Mike, can you use my thing? You're like, I don't even have this problem. Like, ooh, that doesn't really solve my problem.
Not meeting the consumer in the place that they're going to have the aha moment. So it seems out of place. Just like someone would be offering you a car wash in the middle of a snowstorm. It's the timing's not right.
Exactly.
Wait until 2 days later when the car's covered in salt. And you live in Minnesota, right? So you understand. And I'm in Buffalo, New York, so we totally get it. But yeah, it's the timing, and it's solving the need when it arises.
Absolutely. And making sure you're solving the right problems, because you also have only finite resources to solve problems as an entrepreneur. And so that that practice is called human-centered design. It really just means you talk to your customers a lot. That's really what, so you can be fancy, be like, well, I'm into human-centered design. It's just you call your customers and chat a lot and understand the problems.
I saw that in the intro. Talk about that, like how important business is people, right? And I've heard that said before, and it's totally true. At the end of the day, when someone's buying a product or service, they're really purchasing the person, the trust, the care that they're getting from this person, and the fact that they feel they're being taken care of, right?
Right.
And then when it becomes like an app, maybe there is no human interaction before buying that app or paying for it or buying that tech product, but it's obviously created in a situation where the human experience or user experience that we say in the industry quite a bit, user experience is the core reason it's being, that the core focus. Talk about that. So talk about some user experience and how important it is to not, when we're talking tech, don't forget about the people who are using the product.
Absolutely. So the key for where did that start? This whole idea of what does that user experience need to look like? It really starts by understanding the problems you're trying to solve, but it's from that customer's perspective. So often, even as entrepreneurs, we can project onto someone what we think their problem is, as opposed to asking them.
Yeah.
And
that's a mic drop moment right there. 63 plus episodes. Boom, guys, go back. Say that one more time. It's so important. Say it again.
As entrepreneurs, it's really easy for us to project onto a customer what we think their problem is. Instead, what we should be doing is actually asking them what their problem is, because what you find is new insights arise out of it, things that you never would have thought of. For example, when we were first building our software product, I built an initial kind of small prototype version of the product based on kind of my ideas of what the problem were. It was so I could show it to people and understand more about the problem and what the solution needed to look like. And boy, I got this whole litany of, people will give you all sorts of functions, features they want you to build, but that's not what is the problem they're trying to solve. So we actually went back to the beginning and we did some surveys. We asked a series of open-ended questions and we repeated them across a series of customers asking about the problem. An example is we discovered that one of the main problems for meetings, because Scena addresses meeting performance, one of the main problems was there was no goal in the meeting. So people had no idea what we were trying to accomplish or if we had accomplished it. And we heard that because people were telling us about, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know if we actually did anything in this meeting. What were we here to do? I mean, there's a title on it, but that wasn't really the goal. And it was only through hearing from customers about what was happening in those meetings that we went, oh, we need a goal.
Yeah. A goal, which also is another way of saying everyone understanding the purpose of what we're doing. Because when you attack life with a purpose, whether it's a business that you are working with multiple people, just like when I hire someone as an intern or whatever, I make sure they understand the purpose of what we do from day to day. So they are now on the team. If you're, again, I'm going to stick with football here, but if you're brought into the team, you know that your purpose is to help this team win a Super Bowl. You don't just say like, we're going to have you like carry the ball and run around for a little bit. That's not, you don't understand what you're trying to do. You're just like, I could do that, but it's not exciting. But when you say, look, see, you and 52 other guys are going to win the Lombardi Trophy, and this is why we're playing this game. It's different. In business, people, if they don't understand their purpose on the team and what everybody else is doing, like you can start to look at other people in the organization. There could be some jealousy, this, that, or other thing. Why does he get to go do something cooler than me? Like I'm stuck doing this. But if you feel on purpose with your task, knowing that everyone else is going to be better off because of what you do, it's that janitor mentality of having the cleanest bathrooms in the whole building because they're working on purpose to be great in what they do. And so, yeah, if there's not a goal or a purpose behind it, everything runs flat, right?
Especially in this, now we're all virtual and it's Zoom and one thing is kind of morphing to the next and meetings have sort of become these blobs in a lot of cases.
Or it's just busy work on the calendar. Nobody likes that.
Right. It's a time on the calendar, not a place that work is being accomplished, right?
Yeah, and then the first 10 minutes of every meeting is who's muted and not muted on Zoom and who's actually running the meeting and are they on time, whatever. And then 20 minutes later, everyone is just like, that could have been an email. And there's a meme. That could have been an email meme. That's exactly right. Yeah, anything else you want to add to that about being on purpose and having how important it is to have a clear plan?
The other reason you want a clear plan too, this is something that came out of research and it's something I think I never thought of, and I'd be curious to know if any of your listeners ever thought of this as well. Do you ever have meeting anxiety? Do you ever walk into a meeting where you're a little bit nervous about what's going to happen because you don't know why you're there? That's the secondary reason for the goal is there's the rah-rah team and the did I actually accomplish anything? But what we really uncovered in those conversations is a lot of people have meeting anxiety because they're afraid they're going to walk in and it's sort of like that dream. Everyone's had that dream where they wake up in some public place naked, right? And they're like, how did I end up here and why am I naked? Right. But it's like that for meetings. Everyone has that sort of fear of I'm going to walk into this meeting and someone's going to say I was supposed to present something or I was supposed to prepare something and I didn't know.
Yeah. when I worked in corporate America, I've been in meetings working for a huge, and it was a great company, but a large company that when we would go into meetings and like the area manager who oversaw like half of the state would show up in a meeting, it's not that we all just were like acting on best behavior. It usually meant that something was big changes were being made. Either someone was coming or going, something from the president of the company was going to be addressed. And usually if it was like beginning of the year, it was how our compensation was going to change. And it was just like real uptight. So I know I've had meeting anxiety. Also, if you're getting called in on a one-to-one performance review, there's a ton of anxiety there because even if you're feeling you're doing well, a lot of times they're not there to tell you you're doing well. They're trying to find what you're not doing well and
Mhm.
incorrect. So yeah, I've personally experienced that myself.
Mhm. And so we learned that the more information you can share about your meetings, this isn't saying you write a novel. This is a couple of lines of information, and even if you don't use software to do that, you can even put it in a calendar invite. Oh, what's that goal, or what's
The
actually
agenda.
happening here?
That's the
It's
agenda.
easy. It's an agenda.
Yeah.
It's really simple, and I think people can tend to overcomplicate it. Think, oh, well, it has to be this huge prescribed thing. No, it's just something that is simple that does the courtesy of saying, hey, the person on the receiving end should be able to have a little more information about what's going on
Yeah.
so
You're
that they
better
can
prepared then.
you can be better prepared. Exactly, because we know, especially as entrepreneurs, we don't have a lot of time to waste. So
Mhm.
you want to spend that extra minute or two, particularly if you're thinking they're preparing something, so that they can come prepared. Otherwise, then you have to reschedule it and you reschedule it, or you do other things. And pretty soon you're like, wow, this thing that should have just taken, 20 minutes ended up taking 2 or 3 hours. And like,
Yeah.
that's not a value add. None of us have that kind of time to waste.
Absolutely. Something that I thought was interesting, and I saved the elaboration for this interview. You mentioned that everyone has an inner engineer in them to me. And I'm, what does she mean by that? I kind of understood, but I didn't want you to tell me. I said, let's save that for once I press record. So here we are. I want to know, what does it mean to have an inner engineer? And do you truly believe everyone has that?
Mhm. That inner engineer, yes. And I think most of us need to let our inner engineer come out right now,
Mhm.
actually, right? It's been a very challenging last in a year plus for a lot of us. We're faced with a lot of these really new situations and we can get completely overwhelmed.
Mhm.
I mean, between the jobs, people having kids, homeschooling, family situations. I mean, you name it. Every time we've turned around this last year, it's been
You
something.
get punched, you get back up, you're like, okay, I'm dusted off, and you turn around and then they hit you in a different spot.
Yes, and what I've been going back to is embracing my inner engineer. What your
Mhm.
inner engineer is they're very logic driven. They're very okay. Well, what's the next step? Okay,
Mhm.
well, what's the next thing? What's the
Mhm.
next thing? Don't necessarily massively have to over architect everything. Just okay, 1 foot forward, and
That's
that's what
kind of
I'm
the
what I embrace.
entrepreneurial quality that I feel, if anything, over the last 3 years, if someone could say, "What did you learn by becoming like running your own business or working on making that a reality and staying above water?" The one thing I picked up on is problem solving. Like
Yeah,
in the past, if I'm texting someone and we're trying to figure out something, it could be plans for going to a movie or a birthday party or having a friend over or something, and there's something missing. Everyone will go like, "Oh, I don't know. What do you think?" And I go right to Google and figure it out. If it's
mhm,
like a process that we don't understand yet, I'll go to YouTube and watch 3 videos. I'll spend 20 minutes and I'll have a solution in a half hour. Write an email back. This is what we were not doing. Where I found other people were like, we got to reschedule the meeting in 2 weeks and come back to it with this. We got to call this person, find out. It's like there's a lot that we can personally solve for. We live in a time, and you'll appreciate this with tech, that there is no shortage of information.
mhm.
There's a shortage of people who are willing to go and take it upon themselves to find the right information. Because even though it's available, doesn't mean everything's the right information. So you have to do your own research and
Mhm.
check some notes, and everything that's on Wikipedia is an accurate kind of thing.
Yep.
So for the young entrepreneurs or college students listening in or high school students listening in, like go and check your work, right? My
Mhm.
point is there's no reason that if you're caught up in something in life, you couldn't try to figure it out yourself. And that's one of the entrepreneur skills that I've learned is just I don't care what it is. Like someone asks me something, if I don't know the answer, I would just find it.
Mhm.
There's no more like moving on confused about what the heck we're talking about. I didn't know what SAP solutions were in great detail, but I could have spent 15 minutes researching it. I wanted to hear it from you because you're the one that's the expert on it, and that's what our audience is tuning in here to learn. My point is, like, if you and I weren't recording this as an interview and it was brought up and we had to get off the phone, guess what I would do for 5-10 minutes? I would just go and figure it out. Oh, now I understand. If someone brought that up in another conversation, I'm not going to look like an idiot because I can at least have some layman's understanding of what it is. So
And yeah, I think that's a great point. And to make it even simpler, layman's understanding of a lot of what I did in the SAP world is if you're entrepreneurs, you use QuickBooks. Well, it's QuickBooks for corporates. Sorry, they won't like me saying that, but that's another simple way to put it, just way bigger scale.
I know a ton of people that use QuickBooks, and
yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's about, sometimes it's as simple as, asking around, sending an email. It right now too, I think particularly is a time where it's been so long, right? Between the isolation and the startup shutdown and people having to adjust and figure out what to do with your businesses that right now, that just sort of embracing your inner engineer of just, okay, what's one thing I can do, just one small thing I can do to move something forward to help you keep going. It's to help you start to build that momentum. And so that's where I say, you kind of go back to that. It's also that wise, kind place in yourself as well to say, okay, I can do this one little thing. I'm really overwhelmed. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of noise with the headlines and all the other things happening, but I can control this one thing. So let me move that one thing forward. And then the next.
Right. And the best way to describe it to me is thinking about, okay, problem solver, but what does that actually define? I think it's being resourceful is what I was trying to spit out. So entrepreneurs are very resourceful because we're going to find an answer. We're going to find a way, even if it's not the right way right now, we're going to keep moving forward in that direction. So I want to talk a little bit about leadership. You're a leader in your organization. You have a small team behind you that you're constantly making sure you have the right plan in place to be successful. And you've been doing that now. And kudos to you for making this a success. So let's talk to budding entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs, anyone that's in a leadership role that's looking to continue to build on that and become even greater. What are some qualities that you feel make a great entrepreneur or a leader? Can be either or.
I think the first thing is just simply being a continuous learner. No, that's one of the things about leadership that is probably been one of the biggest adjustments for me. So when I had my more services-based company, that was primarily me and occasionally a few other people here and there, but it was primarily me. And then when it came to actually managing a team or a coordinated team, I had to think about things a little differently in what was my role versus what were other people's role, and how do you set the stage for that, and what does that look like? And so a lot of it is a continuous learning journey, and knowing that also as a leader, not everybody's always going to fit on the team. And they may fit on the team for a period of time, and then they may not fit on the team later. And that took quite a while for me to get used to as an entrepreneur. Like I would get attached to people. And so it's like, oh, like that doesn't make sense to have that person anymore, or somebody's moving on to something else. And it was a real shock to the system for me at first. And now I've gotten to that point of thinking, oh, Amber, you need to think about this totally differently. You actually need to think about structuring your organization such that people are going to come and go. It's the way things are in our labor market now. And as a leader, how do I create the right experiences so I get the best out of people while they're here? Hopefully they'll stay, but that we also then create a sustainable organization so that it doesn't fall apart if they go.
Right.
So that has been really interesting headspace to be in. You think about things very differently than when you think about, well, I'm hiring XYZ person, but you think about, no, it's more about kind of this role and the activities and the behaviors and the things we need to have and how we develop those people. But your processes are going to be different if you have an expectation that it might not be the same person all the time.
That's amazing. Another mic drop moment. Building an organization that, and this, are you a sports fan? I should just ask you up front. You're going to get sick of my sports analogy.
Do I admit that I'm a Green Bay Packers fan?
No, that's okay. 2 interviews ago, my guest was a Green Bay fan, and I said, "I welcome seeing you guys in the Super Bowl. Let's take care of our business. I think Green Bay has a good shot." I would love that because that would mean that Tampa Bay doesn't get in because we cannot stand a guy. I don't know if you heard of him. His name's Tom Brady.
Yeah, I
Really don't
have.
understand. What am I talking about? I'm talking about building an organization or a team that whether you lose someone, because in sports, like with contracts nowadays, it's hard to keep a good player for 3 years because they're going to want more money from another team.
Right.
So if you lose one of your best players or anyone on your team, someone that's specifically talented in one area, and then they're gone, are you scrambling now? Is your organization going to topple, or are you able to like, okay, we can find someone. We knew what he was doing because a good organization knows everything about what someone's doing. They know whether this person's doing a good job, bad job, somewhere in between, and they would know what to go and find to put in there. It's not always easy. It's very difficult actually, but knowing it, assessing it, and then being able to, you don't topple, right? And so that's a really good sign of an organization that if you lose someone, the whole thing doesn't come crumbling. Bigger organizations don't feel the loss of someone as much as smaller ones do, because obviously if you got 3 people on your team and you lose one of them, that's a third of your organization. If you had 10,000 employees and you lost someone who's a sales rep on the phones, you probably have, what do you got? A couple thousand of them making calls. It's a blip on the radar. I'm not trying to sound like a jerk there. Everybody is extremely valuable in every organization. My point is the organization doesn't feel it as much, but a good one knows how to get another person in there so they're not devastated if someone leaves, gets sick, retires. That's a really great point. Might be the first time we talked about it on the show, is how important it is to build a system that can work with pieces coming and going.
And that's something I've been thinking about a lot more, probably in the last 6 months or so, right? So in technology, I've had a number of contractors that have done a lot of the tech build for the software product Scena that I have. And what I really came to realize is even with all my years in tech, people move on. They want to move on to other opportunities. Or like you said, the way that our whole economy works, someone else can outbid you and you can find that person gone. And they were a critical piece of your process. You almost have to plan that may happen, even though you don't want it. You almost have to plan for that because there's just so many things that, think of all the things in the last year you wouldn't have seen coming.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right?
I would run out. I easily run out of fingers to count them. How many curveballs we were thrown. Here's another great point that you're bringing up too, is a lot of people in the tech world are forward thinking. They're like next, latest, greatest mentality. And that also means that they're looking for the latest, greatest opportunities. And it's not anything negative against your company, my company, or the next one. But if there's something that looks a little, it's like shiny object syndrome in a different way. It's like from a career development stance. So you get a 23-year-old on your team, they're a rock star employee, but you got to understand, like, they may be looking for just a different position that isn't available on your team right now. So you kind of commend them for going and trying to do something great for them. I've walked away from companies in the past, a lot of head scratchers, a lot of people. I kind of burned some bridges, unfortunately, when I left an organization, because I was always looking for something that would be a great stepping stone for me as a personal builder and a career builder for me. And unfortunately, some people didn't see it that way. They thought I was throwing away a good opportunity. And I saw myself as learning and growing to go into what I actually am solving for, my plan. And you just have to understand when it's you that's the one making the step, you got to understand you're going to get some pushback. And when you're the organization that loses someone, if you feel that they're doing it in good faith and for good reason, and not just leaving you for maybe it's your fault that they left because you didn't do something or provide something. So understand why they left. And if it's just simply, hey, they feel they're in a better spot somewhere else, and maybe it is the right fit for someone, that's okay, right? It's like any relationship in life. Like, is it serving both parties to the best of its ability? If not, then maybe they are better served to do a different role that doesn't exist on your team somewhere else, right? I think that's awesome.
Yep. And there's the other benefit to one kind of having those processes and things in place. It means you'll probably document more of your business processes than you ever
Yeah.
did before. And so you'll be a little bit more intentional about them.
Mhm.
But the other benefit of that is if someone does leave, by you having been a little more intentional about your processes, it's also easier for the person you bring in.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have to be quite as disruptive. And I'm not suggesting you stop everything and document all your processes. You basically do that, just like we talked about the entrepreneur, 1 foot forward. You pick an area that you work on for a while, and maybe you do one a week, and you just kind of get the baseline of what's there. Anything you do will minimize what will happen when you lose that employee, because it's probably when, not if, in most cases.
Absolutely. It's detrimental to have an understanding of the processes. So then the next person comes in and you can lay out the groundwork. You're not like trying to figure out what they're going to do and recreate a whole process for them. They are then learning the process. Not that you want it to be robotic, but to the point where let's allow you to be the best version of yourself and have your traits and qualities shine. But first, like learn the playbook. And then once you have this thing down, then all of a sudden you can be the best you in that position. Super important. A couple other things I want to talk about. We want to get to know you a little bit better. We talked a lot about Wonderly. I want to know about Scena. I think not only a beautiful name, literally means beautiful scene. Tell us about the product, and then tell us a little bit like when you're not steering this Wonderly ship that I know you're putting a ton of hours into, maybe more than you'd like to announce. What do you enjoy doing? I know you're married, happily married. What does, tell us about Amber so kind of two-part question. Scena, what that's all about. And then when you're not doing that, who are you and what do you do for fun?
Okay, so Scena, I like to call it meeting performance software, which you kind of go, okay. Really, it's about tracking your meetings as a process, right? Planning
Mhm.
them, managing them, taking the notes, taking the follow-ups, just giving you one place to actually track your meetings to help them run more effectively. It's kind of an unsexy problem, but it's so critical because so much time is lost to unproductive meetings. And so we're just trying to make that better and easier and more seamless. So that's really
So
what
that's
our
actually the
product's about.
software then,
Yeah.
Scena, and they can go in and schedule it. And can you give us a real life situation? So let's say you and I are scheduling a meeting with 5 other people. How would we use your software?
Sure. So you would set up those 5 people to be invited to the meeting. You can lay out an agenda saying, hey, here's who's going to talk about what. You would set up a goal for the meeting, and then you would send it out to them. They would get an email with information about the meeting that they could accept, and then it'll send them an invite to their calendar. And then what happens, the cool thing about Bella is it's got a collaborative canvas. So when it comes time for the meeting, you'll click on a link and you'll open up what we call live meeting tracking. It actually keeps you on time in your meeting, track to your agenda, track your meeting notes, and track your follow-ups. So you know who was doing what as part of the outcomes of the meetings. And so that's actually how the process works. So that's one use case. The other one is, Mike, have you ever walked into a meeting and you thought, if I don't kind of take control of this or put a little organization around it, this thing's going to be a hot mess?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So we have something that's called a live meeting functionality in Bella. You come in, you hit that live meeting, you build your agenda on the fly, and then you can track your meeting notes and all your follow-ups. And
So if
so
you didn't do it ahead of time, you can do it in the moment as
you
well.
can do it in the moment, because you don't necessarily plan every meeting. Sometimes you're just invited to it and you walk in and you're like, oh, this is a disaster. Or you're like, oh, this could be so much better if we
Yeah.
just did this. So yes, we have a number of features around. It's really about how to make sure that time, because that time is expensive. Right? Think of how much 5 people in a meeting, that's an expensive meeting.
Mhm.
And if people want to have a good either chuckle or frustration, if you go to my meetbellacena.com website, you can download this little ROI template that tells you how much you're wasting, like in ineffective meetings. This might be kind of a fun exercise for people to
Yeah.
actually see when you wonder, oh, well, is it really worth me actually taking some time to plan that agenda? And then you plug in what happens if you don't. Ooh, now you're like, yeah, maybe I better take a little time, do a little better planning. So
Yeah.
that's Bella. Now, Amber, who's Amber? Okay.
I have a quick follow-up
Oh,
question
yeah.
on Bella. So we're having that 5-person meeting. You and I maybe are kind of co-running it, co-hosting it, if you will. And then afterwards, because everyone was organized into that meeting and there's notes, we all can see like the accumulation of the notes as well? And then is there kind of like post-meeting
You can email them.
files and everything? Like, so it's all available? Like basically what happened in the meeting is still available and you can do kind of post-meeting work. Am I
Yes.
understanding that? Wow, that's
absolutely awesome. Yep. You take the notes. It tracks the to-dos. It actually tracks the status of if people mark them as done or not.
That's amazing.
Yep. We're rolling out.
One more time. I want to get that on the screen here.
Yeah, meetbellascena.com.
Scena.com. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, and then tell us more about Amber.
Mm-hmm. So Amber, the thing that people will never guess about me. So I am grab is not the right word, voracious canner. Like that, yeah, that thing grandma did. Or maybe great grandma.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I'm keeping that art alive, man. So when people say, "Oh, you can things," they're like, "Yeah, like what?" I'm like, "Oh, how much time do we have? Strawberry jam, blueberry jam, strawberries, blueberries. I have a quadberry jam, pickles, peaches, spaghetti sauce, vegetable broth, tomatoes." I could keep going on and on and on.
Well, this shows a little bit of how you were raised, right? Did you learn that from a parent or a grandparent? No, this is your first generation?
Kind of. My mom canned this tomato sauce thing. She called it gook. That was her name for it.
Oh, that's not a really great. Can you imagine going to the grocery store? Hey, pick up something.
What a horrible name. Yeah, like GOOK is how she would spell it. Yeah, it's like her tomato gook, she would call it. And I'm like, what a weird name for something. I'm like, that's like saying junk. I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, that's
slightly better than goop.
Yeah.
It's not far. It's not far off from goop.
She made that growing up, but I never participated. I had no interest in canning. It all started with, I used to have a sensitivity to onions. I couldn't eat onions, and I liked salsa. Talk about a product problem.
Yeah.
You try and find an onionless salsa. Yeah. And so I had my mother-in-law teach me how to can. And so I would get produce from the farmer's market, or at that time I had a garden as well. And that's how I learned to can. It all started with onionless salsa. And then
how long does it take, like the whole process of basically, walk us through that. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. So salsa in particular, I would have to chop up all the vegetables and you would have to cook it. And so that whole process of doing kind of the chopping and the pre-prep and actually making the salsa, that's about a 2-hour process for how long that takes. And then there's the actual process of the canning itself, and it goes into a water bath canner for 15 to 20 minutes, depending kind of on your altitude and stuff. And so to tell you the truth, it takes about 3 to 4 hours to make a batch of probably 8 to 12 salsa jars. And this is what I do in the summers. This is my outlet. It's how I get offline. I will go strawberry picking and I'll make jams. And this is just fun for me, where a lot of people are like, well, why don't you sell them? I'm like, that would now make it work. It's my
not why you were doing it in the first place. I did think that too, and I was kind of waiting for that to come as part of the story. But hey, you did not start it with that determination or purpose or desire, and so that's fine. It's your outlet. How important is it to have an outlet? Don't you think it's extremely important for someone who's I don't want to say highly strung, but highly motivated and constantly pushing, getting the most out of your week as a business owner. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, some people tune out and they want to go to Netflix. You tune out and you want to go to canning. For me, it's doing this show and spending time with my family. I know you do that as well. So how important do you feel it is to have an outlet?
It's incredibly important to allow your brain to unplug from the matrix. We can get obsessed with what we're doing, and it can really lead us to unhealthy places. I mean, one of the downsides of growing up on a farm, and other farm kids might tell you this same thing, is all my siblings and I didn't figure this out probably till our early 30s. But all of us are kind of what some people would call workaholics, but based on the number of hours. I've always derived a lot of satisfaction out of my work. And so I've never felt like it was being a workaholic. I enjoyed and got a lot of value out of it. So for me, I had sort of a challenge with being called a workaholic per se. But what we discovered is, we grew up on the farm. In the summer, My dad was literally up at the sunrise and was back at sunset. I mean, that is what life was like for me growing up.
Wow.
And so I was used to that. And I was all summer, that's what it was like, spring, summer, fall. So we kind of work like that as adults, my siblings. And I've heard other people that had farm backgrounds have said, yeah, me too. I'm just like that too, because that's what it was like. But you know what we forgot about? We forgot they had winter, in which they didn't do very much.
Yeah. That was their downtime. Naturally, the environment said, take a break, get indoors and kind of, take a deep breath that way.
Absolutely. So I had to learn to find my winter, so
Yeah.
to speak. And it had to be a little different because it wasn't going to be 3 to 4 months of downtime the way it was kind of for my dad, where it was much lighter. So it had to be something on the weekend. And I kind of have a timer on my butt. And I imagine a lot of people listening to this do too. It's like, we can only sit still for so long. I can binge Netflix for, a period of time. If it's Cobra Kai, the whole season in one go. But, other things, I'm not necessarily going to sit there.
Whenever I do that, like, this isn't a try to be like, don't ever watch TV or Netflix. But at time, I really don't, to be honest with you. I watch sports, and not all the time. It's like when, I watch every single Buffalo Bills game, and I'm a huge Yankees fan. So when I'm working, I have the game on, and they're 4-hour games. The Yankees always play super long games. So I mute it and work in the evenings with the game on, and I can peek. And if like one of my favorite players is up, I'll maybe watch an at bat here and there. But when you're an entrepreneur, there's this very little time. You get focus time. And so I get antsy. Like if I'm just sitting back and watching like TV for too long, I get antsy. I got to check my email and stuff. The one thing I do, I have a beautiful daughter. She's going to be 6 in a couple of weeks. When this comes out, she'll probably already be 6. And our time together is precious. I only have her for 2 to 3 days a week. So when we are together, I find myself, don't check the email right now until she goes to bed, or if she's back with her mother, whatever it might be, it's an opportunity for me to then go back to work. But in the moment, everyone has their thing. I just think it was important for us to get it out there that you and I are both, people putting 60, 70 hours easily into our business, yet we also are finding time with our family and also time for your canning, for me to show, or other things that I'd like to do in my free time. Super important message.
And for us too, my husband grew up with canning. And so when I wanted to start do this, he was all in. He actually really enjoyed it. And so he's a great partner to help with it. And so we actually can way more than we need so that we can give it away to friends. And
Awesome.
you know what I've discovered about that? Nobody says no to home canned goodies. Like no one's like, oh, your homemade salsa from ripe tomatoes in August. Oh yeah, no, I'm not interested.
Well, here's the thing, like if someone that someone put time and energy into it, they literally by hand did something for you. So it's almost like at Christmas time when the neighbor knocks on your door and says, hey, I made you some homemade cookies. Like you're not going to say, no, I'm good. Even if you're on a diet, you're like, awesome. And then maybe you use, someone else can eat them or you eat them. Obviously you're going to enjoy it, but it's the fact that you made it, created this thing by hand. It's common, you better say yes to that. If someone said no, it's a slap in the face at that point. Here's another thing that's a huge moment that you mentioned is with your spouse, right? Or if someone's not married, it's their boyfriend, girlfriend, or, whoever it might be in that relationship, to find something that you love doing together. I think it's so important for both people to find something. Like maybe if he didn't like canning, he did canning with you to know that like, hey, this is awesome. She loves this. And then maybe you watch the game with him and you could care less about the game, but you're together with him. I just made that scenario up, but that's a great point. We can go into a whole relationship thing here and have another podcast. Maybe we do that on another occasion. Learning more about yourself. Who is your biggest influence? And then tell us about like some of your favorite books and podcasts for inspiration.
Oh, my biggest influence. I think my biggest influence continues to change with where I'm at just as a human and on my own journey.
Okay.
And right now, can I name just one? If I were to name one, it's Darren Hardy.
Darren Hardy is great. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yep, I'm taking his Hero's Journey leadership course, and it's really about developing your leadership skills. And I thought it would be really interesting to take something that helped me focus on my skills as a leader. He is probably the one I keep coming back to over the years. And I think it's really important for people to find someone that speaks to you where you're at. Like, he works for me. Other people I know that have listened to him, they're like, that doesn't work for me. I'm like, I don't know, something about the way he teaches, it works for me. I hear it. I'm able to absorb it. I'm able to respond to it. So I would actually say Darren Hardy is
Yeah,
probably
he has
the
his own
biggest influence.
podcast. I haven't listened to it in a little while. I believe it's still active, right? His podcast.
Yep. Yeah, he does a daily 5 days a week one, and then he also, some of those episodes go into the podcast and some other things, and he's got various leadership trainings. There's all kinds of different stuff that he does, and so and multiple books as well. For if any of your listeners read Success Magazine, I believe he still owns that. He used to be the editor. He isn't anymore for that as well. So
I just know and everything I've seen with Darren in it, it's not all rah. It's actually like applicable things that can take your business from one level to the next, and it's great content. He's entertaining. He's a great speaker, highly respected individual. Someone else that I love, I've talked about him plenty on the show. I had the opportunity to interview him as a co-host on a different podcast, is Ed Milet. And I just want to say to you, if you like Darren, I think you would like Ed. He's in a similar space. Do you know Ed? Have you ever heard his content?
Don't, and now I will be doing a little Googling after this.
Yeah, he's just a fantastic human being, like has a crazy backstory as well. Started, from nothing and found his purpose in life. There's that key word again, and then had plenty of failure and also didn't let that define him, continued on and became the incredible person that he is today, and does a great job with this show. And he's a huge influence in me actually getting started and doing my show. So I felt, hey, I always like to help you out. You just gave me another name, a reminder that, hey, Darren's out there. Go check his content out. Haven't heard it in a little while. And you got someone new that you can check out as well. What about books? Anything that you read and you just go, man, this needs to get out to everybody?
Let's see. I have been reading Crossing the Chasm. It's an old one, and they've updated it a few times. And I've actually been reading that one. It's supposed to be really about your early stage, how you transition from kind of one size marketing wise to another. But I've read it with a very different lens and thinking about how I build product. So that has been one that's been really interesting that I've read. And then I'm revisiting I won't say old, a previous author I used to read that, I don't know if any of your entrepreneurs on here are familiar with the Millionaire Next Door stuff, the stuff that
not
I think it was Thomas Stanley that wrote it. Now, he has passed away, but his daughter continued his work. And within the last couple of years, they came out with one called The Next Millionaire Next Door. What it really does is it actually surveys and looks at real millionaires and what behaviors and how did people accomplish it. It might not be the behaviors that you think. In fact, actually, a lot of people on it might be like, hey, they're sane behaviors. And so that was really interesting. So I've just been reading that and just enjoying going, oh, well, this is really interesting.
So it's actually, again, applicable things you can apply to your everyday life, your business, your personal plan to achieve that. And it's told through people who've actually done it, not the Instagram. I'm taking a picture in front of a Ferrari.
Right.
Because I rented it out for the day. There's a lot of that going on.
Because the likelihood is, spoiler alert, you probably don't own a Ferrari if you're a millionaire.
Yeah, and there you go. Yeah, not all of them do, and that's just like a misconception that you have to have that kind of a car or even that brand. And hey, I'm not taking anything away from having a Ferrari. I think that's
no,
beautiful vehicle. But my point is, you're learning from people who've actually done it, and we're talking about the processes, like we said earlier, that are so important in a company. It's not just taking a picture or trying to do the highlight reel thing on Instagram. Like, hey, that's cool if that's real, but what else can you offer? How can you teach us how to get that? It's not great. You got it, but you want to help other people get it. And that's why you're talking about, what was it? Thomas Stanley?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Called The Next Millionaire Next Door. Yes. And it is about the behaviors and the process that people followed. That to me is always the most interesting, because a lot, like I think it was something like 42% are entrepreneurs. That tends to be one of the best ways to become a millionaire. So I just thought it was really, it's interesting to see the real life case studies,
Yeah.
because I find the real life case studies more inspiring than some abstract celebrity I don't know. But those
Right.
real ones to
Yeah.
me are more like your typical people,
Yeah.
and
You
that feels
want to
good.
hear it from the source.
Mhm.
Other thing is, you talking about that as well, is, you when you're talking about not just one person, and you can follow a number of people, especially when it's collective information in one book,
Mhm.
it's so much better to, like, you now can take a little bit from each one. You mentioned Darren, right? Not
Mhm.
everybody is going to connect with him. I also listen and have read many, if not all now, of Grant Cardone's books. I don't always love everything the guy does. Sometimes he turns me off when I hear a video. I'm like, oh my God, just a little bit overkill. But in his books, I don't necessarily need to love every single word on every page, but there's a ton of value in there that I know works and I can apply to my business and I can share with other people. So even if you don't necessarily like the person or the face or the podcast, go and find the pieces of information you can collectively take from it. Do your copy and paste mental download, or physically take notes, or in your phone take notes, and then apply it to yourself. The way that you're going to take some information and the way I'm going to use it may be different. We may be listening to the same speaker for 45 minutes, and you're going to come with different things that you can apply and be great for, and I'm going to take different things. So I think it's super important for people to realize when you're getting information, think about how you can apply it in your own game plan and make it work for you, not who the person is, the face or name behind it.
Mhm.
Super important. And we're going to talk about your name in your face and your legacy that you're building. If you can be known for one thing, what would it be and why?
If I could be known for one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, this you got me a little stumped.
Hey, you said
Yeah.
talk about curveballs in 2020.
That's a good one. If I could be known for one thing, it's that I'm always reaching for what is that next thing that helps me be the best version of myself that I can be.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily anticipate I'll become some big celebrity or that my startup is going to go to be some $1 billion company. No, I'm out to solve real problems for real people. That's really the crux of what I'm trying to do. All at the same while of I want to make sure I am known for having run my race the best I could, because
Yeah.
I'm the only one that can run my race. And
Amazing. Bam, boom. Again, focused on taking care of the consumer. Again, your product or service, Scena, Wonderly, is actually helping people. And that your legacy is that you're going to be the best version of you. You're not trying to become something that you're not necessarily, like, you don't even have an interest in that. You have an interest in simply being the best you can. You're not saying, I don't think I'm capable of. You're not saying, I don't think I can, like, be a billionaire or millionaire or have Wonderly turn into the next latest greatest app. Um, I didn't take it that way. I took it as you're going to focus on being the best version of yourself
Mhm.
and continue to learn and grow and continue to get more clients. And that may happen, but that's not what's going to define you. You being the
Absolutely.
best Amber every single day is what's going to build your legacy. And I don't know your family, but I'm sure they appreciate that. And I can see the smile on your face, and I can tell that you're fulfilled and comfortable in your own skin, which is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Jinx, we just said it together. How about this? My mission on the show, you may have heard this when you listen to a couple other episodes. I always like to wrap up with this. I like to inspire our audience to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. What message can you deliver to get that across?
Mhm. Sometimes you running your best race is about the people that you inspire. And so to share that is you never know who's watching you that you never realized was watching you. And that's why you run your race. So, to share a story, a couple of years ago, I was talking with my brother, and we had been out shopping for the day with my nieces and nephews, And my brother said, hey, Amber, I got to tell you something interesting happened the other day. My daughter came home from school and she was 11 at the time. And they were asking them, what do they want to be for their career? And that, people are, fireman, teacher, all the usual things. And she said, oh, well, I'm going to be an entrepreneur like Auntie Amber. I'm going to run my own company.
Yeah.
And I stopped because I said, me running my race meant that for my nieces, a woman running her own company and being successful in technology was normal.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you run your race. You never know who's watching that goes, well, I can do that because so-and-so did it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it all worth it.
Oh, that is so awesome. Yeah, again, running your own race means you're authentic. It means you're being real. And that's what people are going to gravitate towards. Not what you say you do, but what you actually do. And then also not doing it to showcase or show off or whatever it might look like. It's actually making a difference. And with your business, it's helping people out. And with yourself, it's making yourself available today to take the hour to be with me, to help out our audience. You and I have met other times throughout the year, and as crazy as it's been, one of the things and benefits I get from doing my show is meeting incredible people like you. So I just want to thank you again for doing that. Couple more here to wrap up the show is tell us about, in this crazy time, the pandemic that we're in, did you walk away with a new takeaway or maybe a new skill that you wouldn't have learned if everything was just kosher?
Yeah, it wasn't a new skill. It was making sure I dust off the old ones. And was a key thing of sometimes in our entrepreneurial bag, one revenue stream might not be great, but you might have other things you can do that you never saw that may benefit your business. So, for example, in my previous world in SAP consulting, I did a tremendous amount of training for people. It was a gift that I had of making software humanizable. It's like I could understand it, they could relate to it. I didn't pretend it was perfect, but then they would be trained well on it. Well, one of the things that we started doing for Bella is we're actually doing these experiential workshops where we're starting to actually have people work on their own meetings. And so I'm dredging out those old training skills, those old how do you build workshops, how do you build training courses skills. I had them. I just wasn't using them because I was applying everything toward kind of building software technology. And so I'm dusting them off, and we're finding a way that actually fits within my software world. So I'd actually say it isn't actually so much about learning new skills. What did you let go dormant? You could just dust it all off. It's just sitting there, but you forgot you had it. That's where I would start.
Huge. Another amazing. You're just hitting us with these mic drop moments, I like to call them. That's a great point. It's not a new thing. It's something that you don't always go back to something that maybe you even love doing. For me, it's reading. I love to read. But I'll tell you what, at the end of 2020, I was not reading at all. I just felt always like I was stuck trying to do one more task for the day. And it was either emails, proposals, creating more content, whatever it was. And even though I knew I loved to read, because when I read, I feel empowered. I feel educated. I feel like I can be a better version of myself because now I have more information, and information is empowering. And so in the new year, my girlfriend and I have actually started something where every day, Monday through Saturday, we get up first thing in the morning and we actually read on the phone. We rotate. We read a chapter of a book together, and then we do those.
Nice.
And then once the book is done, we go back and read only the highlights, and then we do a summary. Because to me, when you read a book, when you do something, and this is from the pandemic, right? It's kind of going back. There's this little bit of extra time. So I'm not driving around as much as I was before because everything is happening remote. We're doing this remote right now, but if you lived in Buffalo, we would be doing this remote right now, where usually it would happen in a coffee shop or whatever, studio. And so that extra time, the half-hour drive there and the half-hour back, is a new hour. So there's your hour to read. So I started to think about the extra created time from the pandemic. And so I'm like, look, there's no reason in the morning we couldn't read. And we kind of challenged each other, like, let's do this. And I said, well, let's do this together. But the other thing I just want to shout out here to anyone listening to this that's thinking maybe I want to start reading too, it's maybe on your to-do list, is not only is it empowering, but it's important that you don't read, and this is my own mistake, read a book and move on to another one without really applying what the heck you just learned. Because what good is it reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, which we just wrapped up, and then not apply one darn aspect of it into life? And then you go on to the next book. It's like you just spent all that time reading it, but if it doesn't make any difference, then you could have just slept in one more extra hour.
And that's the problem with a lot of things we read. And so I'm careful about how many additional business books do I take on. So I'll take on things that are in certain subject matter areas I want to learn about. But you're right, you have to give yourself the time, grace, and space to absorb and apply. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and beat yourself up for you spend all these hours on it and then I never applied it. It's the common crux with a lot of training things too, is I go to this great training, but then there's no time to apply it.
Yeah.
And that's something I thought about it a lot as I started how I'm designing training courses, is that is the problem. Okay, well, how do we design a training course where that's not the problem? So even think about that as you read a book. How am I going to design my process around reading that book so that it doesn't become one more thing I read and think it'd be great to get to, but I never do anything with it?
It's the value. If you're going to give an hour of your time and you're a business professional, then that hour you could be spending doing other things that can help you earn more money, earn the next client, build your team, help the people on your existing team be even greater. And so if you're going to create time to do this task, then you need to figure out a way that it's actually going to move you forward and be beneficial in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, it's just clutter. And again, I just want to make sure we go back to how you answered the question. I think it's beautiful is that you said it kind of reopened up some of those things that existed before, but ended up in the closet, layer of dust on them. Because 2020, it kind of re-exposed people to, okay, now what are you going to do? Because we take away a lot of things. Well, there's pre-existing things that were there that just have some dust on them. So it's not always about new; it's about kind of reinventing.
Absolutely.
Beautiful way to put that. Last question, and I hate to do this, but we're about to wrap up here. You've been fantastic on the show. Thank you so much. I always say be great and be grateful, right? Means go and be the best version of yourself, which you said you're already out to do. That's your legacy. And it also means while you're having the opportunity to do great things, you reflect and stop at least in the morning or at night or both and think about what you're actually grateful for. You're shaking your head yes. So it sounds like you do that already. What are 3 things you're most grateful for?
I am most grateful for my spouse, because on the other side of this pandemic, and not to be cheesy, is my spouse and I looked at each other several months in and we said, we really like each other. Like, that's kind of cool. And we've been together over 20 years. So it's like, it's nice to still like each other at that point.
Cheers to that.
Yes. And so he is the number one thing that I am grateful for. The second thing that I'm grateful for is I've worked really hard to cultivate a set of both business and personal friendships. And that has been instrumental in getting through the pandemic, whether it's people I check in with regularly. All of us are going through various periods of lockdown. We're not supposed to see anybody, or maybe it's okay to see somebody. I'm really grateful for having worked really hard to cultivate some of those friendships, because that has been really helpful from a mental health perspective. And the third thing that I am grateful for is that I've still been able to travel a little bit, in various periods of the pandemic. It's just been, mostly road trips and other things, because that's always been super important. And I'm really grateful for the people that are trying to make it possible for us to do the things we can in a safe way. So anybody that is in some of those hospitality and restaurant and other types of businesses that are really on the front lines of this, I'm incredibly grateful for them as well.
Yeah, you don't take it for granted. And just having a night out where you can go out and eat in a restaurant, which seemed like just an everyday activity, nothing too special. Obviously, you want to make the moment special with who you're with. But just being able to walk in a restaurant right now and sit down and have a nice meal, sounds so welcoming, because it's been a while that I've been able to do it. And you're mindful of being grateful for all of those little moments as well as the big ones. And I learned a lot from you today, and I know our audience certainly did. And then they can again, guys, thank you for tuning in. But you can tune into Wonderly. Again, it's WonderlySoftwareSolutions.com, and Wonderly is spelled WONDERLY, softwaresolutions.com. On Instagram, it is at Bella_Scena. And on Facebook, it's, if you search for Meet Bella Scena, you'll find her product that way. And there's also a website, which was what? MeetBellaScena.com?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any last words you'd like to say before we head out?
I would just like to encourage everybody, run your race.
Yeah. I love it. Run your race. You're doing that, and you're inspiring me in every day. So again, thank you for being here. Let's keep our communication going. I'm going to continue to follow how Wonderly is doing, how Bella Scena is doing, and go Packers, go Bills. I'll see you in the Super Bowl, hopefully.
Sounds great.
Have a great one.
Mm-hmm.
I love you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. Check out more show notes and information on each episode at mikeduppodcast.com. MIKED uppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.